gentlemen, live from the United States of America, this is the Scare Factor. Here's Tyler.
Today we are talking about extreme haunts. What are they and where can I find one? Been looking this one up here for the past few days, and there's quite a few differing opinions on what is and is not, quote unquote, an extreme haunted house. And in that topic, there's also spawned the discussion about extreme interactive horror experiences and even not extreme interactive horror experiences, and what separates, what's the difference between an extreme haunt and an extreme experience like that. That's the stuff that we're going to talk about today.
First, though, we are going to talk about the white elephant in the room.
There is a white elephant.
We're going to let Brian take that one away.
Brian,
all right,
give us the big white elephant.
Yeah, so as we are talking about extreme haunts and extreme immersive horror theater this week, you cannot say the words extreme haunt in polite company without some asshole vomiting out the words, "Oh, you mean McCamey Manor?" And so we need to address it, right? And it's
right.
So let's define first of all, before we jump into talking about McCamey. Let's define what is an extreme haunt, and that's kind of an umbrella term, right? In our research, I had found haunting.net, which is an incredible website for like immersive, interactive theater experiences from non-extreme, maybe you get up and you do a little dance with the actors, all the way up to very well-known shows like The Victim Experience or Castle of Chaos. So they had put up a very good explanation as to what is an extreme haunt. And so I'll paraphrase here because I don't have it in front of me, but basically the way they said this was an extreme haunt is a very umbrella term, right? You have within extreme haunts, you have extreme immersive horror, and extreme immersive horror is kind of what most people think about when they think of an extreme haunt, right? So Castle of Chaos, maybe The Victim Experience, maybe not so much. That one might get into, kind of this extreme interactive theater side of things. McCamey Manor, I think, falls under that extreme immersive horror side. It is very horror driven. Field of Screams in Pennsylvania runs an extreme night, or at least they used to. I'm not sure if they do anymore. Various other haunts, will run a one night only extreme haunt, and it's very much a Halloweeny, traditionally scary sort of theme. So it's these ghosts and goblins and ghouls and whatever, and they're just going to be incredibly aggressive with you. You might have a bag thrown over your head, you might be waterboarded, you might be suffocated, you might be choked, you might be strangled, you might get a little beat up. But it seems overall that most of them are not intentionally hitting or hurting you. You may experience some pain, but it generally won't be long lasting. And I think the most of us would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's for actual haunted houses, right? Not for the immersive.
Well. So that's the that extreme immersive horror, right? Is that it's got these horror elements, or it's definitely based in horror, and the extreme portion speaks to how you're being handled or treated during that experience. So whether that be, getting really manhandled, or you're getting tied up, or you're getting waterboarded, choke strangled, whatever, right? You are experiencing pain to some degree. You're being tortured.
Could be, yeah, to some degree. Right. I really like how that article described it, in that your actions, in theory, would have consequences in more of an experience like that. Whereas in a haunt, there's a fairly predefined narrative and a flow to the show that doesn't change a whole lot. I mean, yeah, the actors can kind of personalize a little bit with the actors as they're going through, but with the immersive experience, there's a lot more channels and different twists and turns that the show can go on based on your actions as a customer as you go through.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the where you get into that immersive function of those types of shows too. So now that we've got that out of the way and we have a working definition, uh, McCamey Manor, right? So what is McCamey Manor? McCamey Manor is extreme, immersive, interactive horror theater, right? Because I don't think anybody would argue with any of those descriptor words, right? It is absolutely extreme. It is absolutely interactive and immersive. I mean, you're you're in the middle of it. You got a front row seat, bud. And it is, from what I have seen personally on the internet or whatever, it's definitely horror themed, right? It's not a kidnapping theme. It's not like a weird theme. It's definitely horror, right?
It's
Um,
an endurance test.
yes, yeah, and that's we'll get into that here in a second.
Weird limits, regardless of what you're afraid of or how
Right,
you
right, right.
interpret. No, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll get into that here in a second. So what it is extreme, immersive, interactive, horror-themed theater. Because, and I say theater because while these things are physically happening to you, you have not actually been kidnapped. You are not actually being tortured, for for whatever reason. You are physically experiencing those torture methods, but it's not like, somebody has kidnapped you off the street and now wants to torture you to see what happens. No.
It's all still simulated.
Right, right, right. It's also simulated. It's not intended to have lasting consequences. At least in any well-run interactive experience like that. McCamey Manor differs in that from the get-go, you are told to park your car in a particular spot, and so they'll roll up in a van. They will throw a bag over your head. They will pull you into their van, and off you go. And they are going to, they're gonna manhandle you. They're gonna slap you around a little bit on the ride to the show location. And then when you get there, um, you're basically thrown like a frisbee into the building. Um,
Or dragged.
or dragged, or,
Yeah,
or,
put a
or
bag
any
over
any
your head
method
and-
any method of quick and painful transport method.
Well, and I would argue that it may not necessarily be designed to be painful. It's just more the act of being drug on the ground,
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's
There's only-
it's all in theme, right? These guys are kidnappers. What would a kidnapper do? A kidnapper would drag you around because they don't want to dick around with trying to get you to walk under your own free will.
Right.
You need
They're not
to
gonna
be
clipping
somewhere.
fingernails off, and they're not going to be pulling teeth,
Right, right. They need you to be
Hair,
somewhere,
They're not
and they need you to be somewhere, and they're going to get you there. So
Yeah.
very much like the military, as a matter of fact. Now that I think about it. So McCamey Manor, yeah, you get there and they're dragging you out of the van. You're going into the building, and that's kind of where the interesting things begin. So Russ McCamey has famously said that he does not like swearing. If you say any word that's not in the Bible, he's going to make it worse on you. If you fight back and this and that and the other and whatever, he's going to make it harder on you. And I think that does kind of fall into the theme of what an extreme interactive theater show is designed to do, right? Um,
Consequences based on
Yeah.
your actions.
right, exactly. And so far, like, and just to be clear, our stance, or at least a number of us have agreed that what Russ McCamey is doing is not a haunt.
Correct.
No, we're still in the immersive theater.
Correct.
I don't even like using the word theater, but it's definitely an immersive horror experience. He's
It's
definitely in that realm.
it's
Nowhere in
theater.
that title is the home.
It's theater in the sense that you have bought a ticket to go to what you understand to be a not real life production.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So and like, for the most part, what he's doing seems to be above board. Where my issue with Russ comes in, specifically, is he films everything. He's in your face with a camera the entire time you're inside. And that's all well and good. If I'm going to go through that thing, I want the video of it. I want to be able to show people exactly what the deal is. Um, my problem with that is that he is the equivalent of a Parkinson's patient who doesn't know what a tripod is. That camera, go to his YouTube page. Go look at these videos. They are all over the place. It's not well shot. He is a wannabe filmmaker that doesn't understand how a fucking camera works.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so that's where my issues with Russ begin and don't necessarily end. Some
Mhm.
interesting things about Russ before he really got into this extreme immersive performance side of things. He was a wedding DJ. I found his website. I forget what exactly it's called. I don't want to plug it here, but basically it's like World of Music with Russ. And like if you go to the website, and you can find this very easily by googling Russ McCamey wedding DJ, um, you will find all the photos that he had taken at events of him dressed up as Elvis. There's photos of like people dancing and having fun. Like this guy looks like he knows how to throw a party. I'm not going to lie. Like he looks like a lot of fun to like, yeah, I want to hire this guy to DJ my wedding.
So
Um,
let's get this back
I think
into
I'm gonna do that for sure.
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
just an interesting tidbit about Russ, right? And it's just kind of funny to see, he went from that to what he's doing now. So whatever. And then there's also rumors going around that he owes the state of California a lot of money in back taxes. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
I'm not assuming anything's true there, but if that is true, and he's offering $20,000 to finish, the marathon experience, where the hell did he get $20,000 from? Whatever. That's besides the point. Famously, he has said nobody has ever finished this experience. Uh, my question is that because you've made it, so brutal and difficult that even a, a Marine veteran can't handle this, or is it because he's moving the goalpost, right? Do you get so close and not falter, and then he's like, yeah, you know what, this isn't hard enough for you. I need to make this harder, right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of my question on that. My other issues with him is that when you look at reviews and you look at people talking about other extreme shows in a similar vein, they all say the same thing, that they were never hit or struck intentionally um, in any real way, by any of the actors.
Exactly.
Where Russ differs on that is that his guys will slap you all around. You might, I don't know that you'll take a punch, but you're gonna get a big, beefy, Debo looking dude that's gonna slap you around a little bit. Um,
No, they shove stuff down your throat,
right,
and
right. Force feeding. You get
your
jammed
head
into
make a leak.
coffins and lockers and freezers, and they'll do things with power drills. They'll stick a power drill up your nose. Um,
I
they
think in their waiver they also said something about sticking you with needles.
Yes, and we can talk about that a little bit later. Herding did a similar thing. I think it was at LA Haunt or something. I'll look it up in a little bit here. But
So, what are some other ones similar to McCamey that may fall under the same immersive horror experience category?
Well,
the
McKinney's
victim experience is a big one. It's no longer being run by the Freakling brothers, but definitely the victim experience is very much in the same vein. Let me see here. La Casa de Satanas, as far as I understand, is kind of in the similar vein. Miasma in Chicago is probably in the same vein. I don't know much about those.
Uh,
Um,
La Casa, La Casa de Satanás did actually have, for I think the Halloween season and the Valentine season, they did have so they went to from, I don't know, some website to OnlyFans, so now they have an OnlyFans because I think they were getting their art censored.
that's
So
right. That's right. I went to their Facebook and they're pushing their OnlyFans all over the place, and I think part of that has to do with the amount of nudity. And so they're probably betting on like OnlyFans is just a good platform for that. Nocent, I don't know much about Nocent. My understanding is that they are very much in that same vein. Quiet as Horror, Shock Theater in New York, Heretic, which is no longer operating, or at least not operating right now. 17th Door, Blackout, Faceless Ventures, Hurting, Scarehouse, Stag, Castle of Chaos. All of those are kind of in the same vein where.
And not Scarehouse's main haunt, right?
The basement that they didn't run last year.
It'd be the basement attraction at Scarehouse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all of those are kind of in the same vein. Now, some of them, like Hurting and Heretic, have done shows or events that are very, very not this, like, you're not getting saran wrap pulled over your face and then duct taped to your face for 10 minutes kind of thing. Specifically Hurting, and I shared this with the group here. Hurting did an event a while back, and it was like a pirate day, and like I watched the video about it, and I'm just like, this looked like so much fun. Basically, like, you paid money. It was like 6 guys, and they showed up at, like, I don't know, a park or something, and they wore pirate hats and they had T-shirts, and it was like the Salty Seaman or something, and it was definitely like a penis joke. It's hilarious, right? It's very 18 plus, but so like they had these T-shirts or whatever, and like they had to go on this little treasure hunt, and they had to find Captain No Beard, whatever, and so they get to this suburban house in like Southern California, where they find Captain No Beard or whatever the deal was, and like. This little confrontation with the other pirate guys, the other actors that are part of this. And, like, the weirdest part of this whole thing, I think, was, like, they were told to strip down to their underwear, and then a bunch of dudes got spanked by some other dudes. So, like, at that point, I mean, like, that's the only weird thing, I think, that happened throughout that entire one. And then after that, like, they were told change into your swim trunks, and then they were told walk the plank. But they were blindfolded, so they had to walk off a diving board into the deep end of a pool, which I guess to an extent could be kind of torturous if you don't know how to swim. But other than that, like, just the whole video was like these guys having so much fun. You could see them laughing and smiling the whole time.
And there's a big audience that looks for things like that, which is kind of why we're covering some of them, because we understand that people out there want to do these things. But we also want people to understand that there's other types of extreme haunts. And we don't want, like, the general fan of haunts going around and looking for something like McCamey, because that's what they want to do, and then getting upset with all the regular haunted houses or what's put on as an extreme show at a general haunted house, and getting upset and leaving bad reviews, yada, yada, because they're like, oh, I wanted you to actually, like, kill me. Because there are people that will leave reviews like that. It's crazy.
Right.
Those are the people that I think are looking for more of the immersive experience,
Yes.
the horror, immersive horror versus a haunted house. Because a haunted house, as long as you're still actually a haunted house, I think your main objective is still to provide, number one, the scariest and most drastic show you can, but you also have to maintain throughput. I think that's a major key to it as well. And like I say, with the haunts, you're wanting to get the most people through in a night that you can. You're like your Scarehouse basement shows. They're the ones that are a select few dates, and they're trying to serve as many people as they can in that short amount of time. Whereas an immersive horror experience, they might only have 1 or 2 rounds a night, and they make 5 or 6 people or 8 people, however many it is, last for the majority of that time, and creating a much different experience.
Right. And it's also important to note that, there are people who go around looking for that, McCamey-esque experience. But, like, the other thing to understand, too, is McCamey specifically is very, very much a rarity in this world. That's not to say that sort of thing isn't happening, right? Specifically, Hurting did they did a thing at Scare LA, which, as I understand, it's a convention in LA. And so they did a mini event there called Inoculation, and their description of this was, with no vetting from Scare LA, we could do anything we want. So we did. We decided to test our audience by seeing how many people would actually let us stick a real needle in their arm. Spoiler, all but one did.
Oh my god.
And they really did this, right? So, like, and I'm sure it was the sort of thing where you're like, oh, hurting, yeah, this might be kind of weird. Anything could happen here. And then when they got the needle, like, I'll bet you. So it said that one person didn't let that happen, so they were probably like, nope, getting the hell out of here.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they've done some stuff that's very, very horror driven. This Skin Collector comes to mind, right? So they do like this Buffalo Bill type character that, is very like he wants your skin. He will do anything to get your skin. You will actually believe that he's trying to get your damn skin.
I mean, if you could incorporate that into what I would feel as a better extreme haunt, because like, the extreme haunts that I like to visit, if some people don't want to call them that, but are more the ones that like we visit frequently, that
Right.
are just more extreme than all the other ones we visit.
Right, and and that's and it's always a question of like where do you draw the line of extreme, right? Because I've been to a few special events that were more extreme than their regular show, but not what I would consider to be an extreme haunt by any means.
Right.
So what would you call an extreme hunt?
I think personally
Where would
the
you
way
draw the line?
yeah the way I would think of an extreme haunt is it's gotta satisfy a number of things. It can't just be one or one or two of these things. It has to be most or all. You have to sign a waiver that basically says you're going to get wet, dirty, bloody, and hurt. You will be in pain at some point. You will be tortured. You have
That
to
could be shocking for those that are like, what kind of hurt are we talking about?
torture. You might get electrocuted. Getting electrocuted hurts.
Yes, it does.
That's a common one is breaking out a cattle prod and actually using it. So like that might be an element of it. So having to sign the waiver and then you actually doing the things that I said was okay in that waiver. Maybe suffocation is going to be a big thing. That seems to be a really popular thing. So whether that's you're coming up and you're putting your hands around my neck, or you're putting saran wrap over my face for a period of time. That might be it. Waterboarding. These torturous kind of things. That actually happening, and not just like putting me on, a table and then you pouring water into a bucket nearby. You're making me nervous, but you're not actually waterboarding me.
So how could a haunt do that without being called an immersive horror experience?
Right. So so it's interesting, right? You could do total blackout events where things are happening very close to you without actually touching you, and they're letting your mind run wild. Taylor Winters of Hurting has said this best by saying that like you have to build up the suspense. There is nothing scarier to any one person on the face of this earth than what they can create in their imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
So if you as a regular haunt can find a way in a special event or otherwise to get your patron to build up the scariest thing that they possibly can in their mind before touching them, before shocking them, before doing anything with them.
Shocking doesn't have to be a cattle prod. It can just be.
Oh no, it could be a taser. It could be a zapper. It could be it could be that little thing that you use to zap flies. Because like if you touch one of those, like it's gonna hurt a little bit.
Yeah, it could be on the wall. If you're brushing your hands on the wall, it'll give you a little twinge.
Right. Yeah. Or it could be. Wall. Or it could be like we're gonna splash you with some water and then we're gonna hit one of those wet spots with a 9-volt for half a second.
Woo!
Mm-hmm.
So
there's gotta be more ways to do it than just electric shock, right?
Right. Well, I'm just using that as a specific example, right? But that does seem to be a very common thing. Zappers, tasers, cattle prods, electric shock is very common in this world, as is suffocation. Because those are very real things that people have genuine fears about, right? Suffocation specifically is something
And
that
maybe
a lot
not
of
even
people.
saran wrap for suffocation, but just maybe a bag over the head, like a burlap bag, to where
Or
somebody can
as-
still breathe because there's safety
Or
issues.
some of
you
us
know,
on this chat have experienced being covered in balls as you're laying on the floor.
we have been buried alive with the plastic balls.
Yeah.
It's
Once you're in
Quite
there
an
for so long,
experience.
you begin to wonder, how much longer can I stand this before I like freak out and stop breathing?
Well, I mean, like, you're talking like ball pit balls, right?
Yes.
yeah. We
I mean, like,
experienced
I feel like that. I don't know. For me personally, it wouldn't bother me so much because, like, if I ever get tired of that, I could just stand up.
You
You
can.
know what I
No,
mean?
that's
Like,
not possible.
That's
That's
cheating.
not possible.
it's,
Have you
it's
tried it?
like,
Especially if they make you lay down.
Yeah, we all had to lay down on our backs, flat on the ground.
So you're only talking about 10 to 12 inches of these balls, but when you're laying down,
It's
Yeah.
you got a little
different
bit
than
more surface
like
area
we've been
there.
in the ones where you stand up and you get covered in them, and it's way different when you're
that.
like,
Yeah, I
laying
could
down.
see like standing up in a box and then you just fill that space around me. Like, I have nowhere to go. But like,
Right.
if I'm laying down and you're just pouring them on top of me, like, okay, well, yeah, I'm sick of this. I'm just gonna stand up now.
Yeah.
Like, that's
But
me personally. But I could see
aside
how
from-
somebody else might freak out because they don't understand what might be going on, especially if you're blindfolded.
Or even if you
Absolutely.
do, like, before you go into it, you know what you're walking into. Like, hey, this is the ball pit. This is the buried alive area. If you don't like it, you can go around. So even if you do know that you're going into it, as soon as you get covered with those balls, all that shit goes out the window, and you're like, oh, fuck.
Right. Yeah,
I know that's what Nancy was going through.
Yeah.
Because we
Oh.
did one of those
Did
up
you
at...
guys see me freaking out?
Yeah.
I could feel you freaking out next to me, and then you were making me freak out because I'm like, how long are they going to leave us in here? These are getting heavy. And it did exactly what they wanted it to do, though, and that was the
Mhm.
purpose of it. But aside from suffocation and electrocution, obviously taking away people's sight and their ability to be able to feel things. So our hands have been duct taped just going through a normal haunted house.
Mhm.
So you got your hands in front of you and they're duct taped together. It starts to get a little awkward when you have to go into scenes with like the fear flaps hanging in the way. And normally you just open them wide up and you walk through. Well, you can't when you don't have any hands. So just taking away those abilities can make something more extreme than it normally would be.
Yeah, it
I
can
know
make it
for
can make it
sure.
a lot more nerve-wracking for sure.
Yes, and the not being able to see, like we've done several different instances of being hooded where we can't see anything that's going on. And when even if you just have a hood on in an attraction and a fireball goes off what feels like 2 foot away from you, it'll get you for sure.
Oh yeah. I'm thinking about like if I go through certain haunts, if I were to go through some haunts around here, there are some things that would definitely hit me a lot harder than they do now if I were blindfolded and could not see.
Right.
But overall, I feel like that would make my experience less scary, right? Because I'm a very visual person. So like what I see is a lot of what influences my how I'm feeling about a situation. So like if I can only hear the actor, like yeah, I've been behind the scenes. Cool sound, dude. Like can you make it louder? You know what I mean? Like
but
It might be a super loud sound effect that's.
I'm thinking, yeah, and on the other side of that, I'm thinking popcorn boxes, right? The popcorn makers that they're the electrical poppers, and they go and they're stupid loud. So like I'm thinking about that. If I'm walking into a scene and I have no idea it's about to happen, yes, I'm going to jump. Like I'm gonna hurt my back doubling over because like I'm gonna think I'm under fire.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like
On
yeah.
the ground.
Yeah, right.
Well, it might
But
have been
like that's or like certain actors, demon acres on their hayride. There's a scene where like Krampus and like some of these actors will get in your face, and if you didn't know that was coming, like, and they made a certain sound really close to you, you could feel the breathing on you. Yeah, that hits you a lot more if you didn't know it was about to happen.
Mm-hmm. Taking away your sense of sight is a big one.
Yep, and getting under people's skin with things that aren't common, such as like bugs, real animals.
Norris had real bugs
snakes.
before.
I've been completely covered in real bugs, and I'm terrified of spiders, and they told me it was spiders, and I did the best that I could to stay where I was at, because I was in the ground coughing with a bag over my head, and I was really, really freaking out, but I was trying not to let the haunt see that. Yeah.
That was an extreme haunt.
That was definitely an extreme haunt. They're not open any longer.
They separated the group, and
I think that's another thing that probably, like, as reviewers, as we're comparing the haunts that we visit every year, and we say this haunt's probably the most extreme in the area, a lot of times it does involve splitting a group up and kind of singling you out and forcing you to do things by yourself, so you don't have the comfort of your friends anymore.
Yeah, that's Terror Behind the Walls at Eastern State Penn. Is very well known to do that. Because it's in an old prison. They have these sections where an actor will grab you by the arms and, like, you're coming with me, let's go. You don't have your friends anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally kind of like that. Like, if you're not super rough with me, if you don't, like, come up and put me in a chokehold and then throw a bag over my head and try to suffocate me and waterboard me, after that, like, I'm super cool with getting pulled away from my friends. Like, I want to see more of this haunt on my own, and I want to see more of those scares that are more personalized for me.
Right. Yeah.
We did just get a comment. Sounds like you've been to Terrortown in Williamsburg. Is that Virginia?
No,
or West Virginia?
Williamsburg is in Ohio.
Ohio?
Terrortown.
Oh, yeah, Terrortown. Yeah.
None of the teams currently on the chat have been. We've heard a lot about it. We've read the reviews. Team Teachers of Terror, who's not with us, generally reviews that haunt, and they do explain it as if it's an extreme show. So I think they get covered in blood, and they make them, like, get down in the mud and do different things. So
that's the red bracelet experience.
I feel like taking a customer and taking them out of the normal walking path of a haunt more so, and forcing you to do things that I guess a normal walk-through haunt doesn't.
Mm-hmm. We've heard stories of people being picked up, turned upside down, and
yeah, they have like a jail cell there, and there's at least one clown that wanders around their town, because everybody can wander freely about the town before they wait to go into the trail. And he'll pluck people out of the audience and take them in there and make them stay in there for a really long time sometimes. Depends on, I guess, what you do and how he feels like he's going to torment you in their terms, and he's picked up people and tickled them and flipped them upside down and shook them, and yeah. But I mean, we've also experienced that in what we would call our general/normal haunted houses too.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like Haunted Hoochie, I think most people would not consider that to be an extreme haunt, but they're a lot more hands-on than most others.
Yeah.
They are a little handsy, but in retrospect, yeah, they're, I mean, aside from their chainsaw freaking onslaughts that they do every once in a while, it's a good thing they've got pads on their chainsaw, that's for sure. But aside from that, we've gone through it a few times here recently, and it's like they just reach out and just kind of brush your hair or touch your shoulders. Well, minus
the guys that come out of the refrigerator and slam you up against the wall pretty hard.
Yeah,
but, you expect that going into that type of show.
Yeah.
I would, looking at like the Ohio Valley of Haunts, I would call the Haunted Hoochie extreme, because they're doing things that no one else is. They're pushing the limit. They're trying to get on your nerves almost. Like they're trying to do something to really piss you off, but it's just their way of getting under your skin. It's different than everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're more aggressive than most for sure. But yeah, I think if you were to poll most people who have been to Haunted Hoochie and who have been to various other haunts either around the country or whatever, maybe they wouldn't call Haunted Hoochie extreme, especially when shown like these are other extreme experiences. They'd be like, oh, Haunted Hoochie's not extreme. They're aggressive for sure. And they are definitely trying to push that line of when do we need people to sign a waiver to be like, we could do things to you.
And a waiver in addition to the ticket is what we're referring to. A lot of haunts use their ticket as their waiver. If you read the back of your tickets, you might be interested to see what it actually says.
Yeah, that's more along the lines of like, and we talked about this earlier this week. That's kind of along the lines of like, if you trip over your own shoelaces because you were walking on some uneven ground, you can't sue the haunt, because like you knew going in that there might be some uneven ground and that you should probably tie your shoelaces.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and you bring up a good point. Waiver on top of the ticket. Waiver that specifically says that like we can do things to you, like we can get really aggressive with you. We might cover you in plastic. We might cover you in blood. We might force feed you actual
And
live bugs.
And we do advise that if haunts are going to do that more commonly than they do now, because we go to some haunts now that regularly do that and their customers know to expect it. But if you're like a haunt curious about offering a show, kind of like what we're talking about, I would definitely advise getting that additional waiver. Make sure you're covered on as much as you can on what you're doing, because, you know, there's a lot of people that are Karens and they will try to sue you no matter what you do, even in a normal haunted house.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, you know, especially getting into the extreme haunt world, if you're a haunt owner that's looking to kind of move into that, even if it's for a one night special event sort of thing, you know, network. Get in touch with those people who have been doing it for years. Get in touch with the couple that runs Heretic. Get in touch with the 4 folks that run Hurting. Get in touch with the Freakling brothers. Get in touch with Don't get in touch with Russ McCamey. Just for the love of God, don't.
No. I think the haunt industry is pretty well aware that they, you know.
but get in touch with the couple that runs La Casa de Satanas. You know, get in touch with these people who are running these renowned shows that are getting stellar reviews, right? Because they're going to teach you things about what it's going to take. You know, you need to be an expert in certain things. You need to have you know, certain things on hand that maybe you wouldn't necessarily need in a regular haunt. You know, you know, you need to have the contingency plans. What happens when you're suffocating someone and they actually stop breathing? What do you do?
Right. If you don't already have emergency personnel on site, it might be a good night to have some.
Yeah, absolutely, right. You know, and that's again, going back to haunting.net, there's an excellent article on here about you know, how to get into, or, you know, 12 lessons from extreme haunting for any haunt creator or owner. And it talks about that sort of thing, about how, like, make sure you have the first aid kit, make sure you have the contingency plan. You know, what happens when something goes horribly awry, because nothing is perfect, right?
Right.
You know, if you have the world's leading expert on waterboarding, how do you ensure that, you know, that person is always doing the waterboarding? You know, because they can't be everywhere doing all sorts of torture. You know, how do you make sure? Another big thing too is consistency, right? And there was a study done at some extreme haunts, and they found that certain actors who were going and doing the same scene over and over, night after night, or event after event, they found that those actors were getting progressively harder in their actions. So if the actor is supposed to put his hand around your neck, slam you against the wall, how do you know that he's being consistently, I guess, consistently hard on you? Like, that he's doing it hard enough to wake you up and let you know who the boss is, but not hard enough to give you a concussion, basically.
Right.
Right? And not hard enough to actually cut off your breathing.
Yeah.
So, you know, and how do you make sure they're being consistent? And that's another thing, is you need to practice until it is absolutely perfect, and more than perfect, because
there's not much room for error there.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you know, and it's like, so some of those things, it's, you know, they found that some actors were just, it's not their fault. They don't realize that they're doing it.
Yeah, that's why they've got to be trained to know exactly what they're doing and what could happen when X plus Y, you know.
Right, yeah. You know,
am I going to get C, or am I going to get Q or R or T? And you got to have plans A and plans B for each scenario, you know.
Right, yeah. And I think there are 1 or 2 places that say, if you want to be an actor with us, that's all well and good. We'll give you an audition, but you have to at least make an attempt to get through one of our extreme events. You know, you have to know what it's like to be on the other side of that.
Right.
Right. It's like in the police when they make everybody.
Oh, the taser and the bear spray. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would think the hardest thing would be when your customers retaliate in ways that you just don't expect them to, and then keep your composure. You know,
put somebody in that fight or flight mode, you don't know what they're going to do. Even if they think they know what they're going to do, it's hard telling. You got to be ready for anything.
Yeah, exactly. You know, what do you do when when your participant starts flailing their arms and hits or kicks an actor, be it unintentionally. They're not going in thinking like I'm going to kick that guy in the balls, but like, what do you do when they do? Right?
It reminds me of when one of the first tattoos I ever got, actually the only one I've ever got. We were up in Sandusky, Ohio at a place, and it was late in the morning. I hadn't eaten a whole lot, and it was the first tattoo I ever got. So one thing led to another. I ended up passing out right in the middle of the tattoo.
And
the guy was getting ready to put the gun down on me, and I felt like I was going to sleep.
He had the gun like tattooing you, and Tyler's like, I'm getting really hot, and he's like, bring him a fan and a cold washcloth.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I just saw Tyler's eyes roll in the back of the head, and he like actually went to punch the tattoo artist.
Arms went up in the air, flailing all around.
Luckily, that guy was kind of used to that, so he knew exactly what to do with Tyler. He like held him by the chest and instantly stopped tattooing, and like got more cold towels, and it was like he just knew immediately what to do in that scenario. And he's like, man, you need to go get a Coke out of that vending machine and eat some crackers.
Yeah, I was just not nourished enough to endure that for that amount of time. So,
but I couldn't imagine how many customers these particular more extreme haunts get, where they just have so many different cases of people that probably shouldn't be there in the first place,
Mm-hmm. Austin, what you've been awful quiet today. What's going on out there in New Mexico?
I mean, Grand with last year only had a couple experiences. There is supposedly an extreme haunt here at the mall. They apparently opened for a day, but were shut down pretty quick. But when I was reading, you sign a waiver, they can like shock you and grab you and throw you in different rooms. But that's about all I've seen. I have been through one extreme haunt like that. He had to sign a waiver, but all it was a pitch black haunt, so you had to crawl through things. They shocked you on the wall, had like cap guns, grabbed you, threw you in corners in the basement of an old abandoned church. But that's about the most extreme, if you will, haunt I've been through. I guess I could try McCamey. That's just to see how it is. Always been curious.
You're gonna be in line for a couple of years.
yeah, a long wait list, but just to see,
Yeah.
if no one's actually made it past a certain number of minutes, is true or not.
Well, famously, he's had a Marine vet go through who did last a number of hours. Apparently, you have to last 8 hours in order to get the 20 grand. And like I said earlier, my question is, has nobody done it because it's so brutally difficult, or are you moving the goalposts, or famously he says there's no safe word. There is no safe word here, right? We know when you've had enough. Well, so what happens, right? If somebody is, really struggling, but they could probably go a little bit more, do you call it just because you don't want to give up your 20 grand? Or like, what's the deal there, right?
To my understanding, somebody has gone over the 8 hours, and like you're saying, they just moved the goalpost until they broke, or
right.
Until they
I think they physically and mentally exhaust them so much, no matter what the time frame is, that they eventually just kind of physically give up, and that's when they're like, okay, you're done.
I've seen somebody kept in a freezer for an extended amount of time, to the point where the next time they checked on them, they were borderline unresponsive and incoherent.
And if you watch the videos, most of the time when they pull those people out and they tell them they're done, they don't even know their names.
Yeah, I don't know how much truth there is to it, because I haven't done it. I haven't interviewed them or any of that jazz, but it does seem like the people that he's got doing it are trained enough to know, okay, enough's enough, and they do know how to medically take care of somebody that's in those kind of states that they put them in, and get them back safely.
You would hope, anyway.
I would hope.
Yeah, they've had one specific lady, I think, that's tried it 4 different times.
Oh, yeah. They had a heart attack at least once. And Russ, in the interview, said, good stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that kind of tells you what you need to know about the man himself.
Yeah.
No interest in it at all. I'd like to mind trying an actual immersive experience, but not that one. Not that one. No interest at all.
No.
No. For people who do want to do... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I actually found out not too long ago that I know someone that has actually gone through McKamey.
Oh, interesting.
I'm
Did
not
they-
gonna put his name up there, but I
No, no,
would be very interested in talking to him about it.
Yeah.
But I know, like, publicly he has said, I can't say anything, pretty much. So I know
Right.
that he's under.
I mean, like,
wraps.
what did he say about like how the experience was? Was it, the way it gets hyped up, or was it like different in any way, or?
From what I have seen, he only says, I didn't make it. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Waivers and stuff that you're not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah,
And-
NDA you have to sign.
Yeah,
And,
I'd be very
Tyler
public
Nora,
about it.
We've actually talked about him before, and for me to know who he is, I don't see him being the person to kind of tap out like in the first few hours.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
You probably
Yeah.
gave it an
It's not
honest
something
run.
I'd like to do. I wouldn't mind trying like Scarehouse Basement
Oh,
or
sure.
maybe even Blackout, but that's still not the type of show I'm looking for.
Right.
I mean, I would try it just to say I've done it and see what I guess get in par with the fans that are looking for that. Like, why are these people looking for this? But for me, I'm a traditional haunted house fan.
Right.
Like, if you want to add some touch and some different things like that and call it an extreme show, I'm completely happy with that. I know Brian's got different expectations for an extreme show, and we probably all do.
Right.
Yeah.
And most
But-
of the haunts around us know that as reviewers, we have to go and see the whole experience. So whether we're on an extreme night or
Yeah.
not, we're kind of,
Luckily, we
Well-
didn't have to experience firsthand one experience one night. We got to sit in and watch because the line was too long. But
that haunt's not.
I don't
open
think I
anymore,
would have
but
been able to make it through it if I was in there.
That was interesting. So the hunt's
Yeah.
not open anymore. So I feel like we can talk about them.
Oh, Randy probably won't mind the owner.
It's called Dreadland Haunted Woods, and this particular experience was called the Dread Zone. And yeah, before you even went in, they wouldn't let you see anything. They'd put a bag over your head.
Had to sign a waiver.
Had to sign a waiver, and most of the time, I think I'm wanting to say they were handcuffed.
I can't remember.
They were
if
somehow
they-
bound to where they didn't have full use of their arms.
And you didn't go in with anybody you knew. Like, you would sign up for it, you would stand in line with your group, and then they would move you around to where you were among people that you didn't know.
Now, and once you got to your station, they would let your arms loose. But during the initial briefing of what you were getting ready to have to do, your goal, they would leave you bound for a minute.
So while they pulled like 6 people in at a time, this has been so long ago, I can't remember for sure how many people they brought in, but they let Tyler and I stand in the corner off to the side because everybody was blindfolded and they didn't know we were in there. And they would bring in, 6 people, and they would put those bags over the head and bring them in. And the first rule was, if you try to punch us, hit, or kick, you're immediately kicked out. And your whole group of 6 people had to compete, with each other to beat the time on a clock that you can't really see. But you had, like, I want to say close to 2 minutes to, everybody had to do something within that 2 minutes, and everybody had to do it to win, basically. So you're kind of competing in an escape room, with people that you don't know, except for it's not an escape room.
And you're blindfolded.
So as soon as they blindfolded, like, the first 3 groups we watched, so many of them got kicked out. Like, as soon as they would blindfold these 6-foot-tall men, they would start throwing
They
punches.
start flailing and kicking and basically
Yes.
screaming. It was nuts. I mean, and
We
all they
couldn't-
were doing was escorting them into the room.
Yeah, it was
They weren't
outrageous.
shocking them. They weren't dumping water on them. They were just pulling them into the room, and they'd start throwing elbows, and it was nuts.
But everybody gets put into their own station, and one station was a big hole dug in the ground, and they put them on some sort
I
of tarp.
say a big hole, but it was like 6 to 8 inches deep.
I'm
That's all
sure
it
it
was.
felt like it was a big
It
hole.
felt like all.
And
of
then
it,
they would
but-
fold the tarp safely, leave their head uncovered, and they would pile dirt on top of them and bury them alive.
Mhm.
So that person had to, I think, dig. Everybody was trying to find keys, which were animal bones to a jaw.
Teeth.
Teeth, yes. And like, another person had a head in a bucket, and they were trying to find something with their mouth. And then one was on a dental chair, and it was like folded flat, and they had to reach up above them really high. And there was like
playing cards or something suspended from the
yes,
ceiling.
and there was gizzards and a lot of blood and animal things hanging up there because they would freshly purchase animal parts for this particular experience. And anyway, they all had to find their own keys, as you want to call them, and while they were doing that, they had a cattle prod and they never touched anybody with it.
No.
They just got it really close.
They'd let you hear it.
Yeah, and just the letting their mind roam freely and all of that, and hearing each other freak out and not being able to see. We saw one group actually find everything they were looking for, I think, out of 3. And then they still didn't make it out because there was other things you had to do once you could see.
Standing back and watching, there was absolutely nothing dangerous about anything that they were doing.
No, but I'm sure
totally
it felt.
controlled. It was very controlled environment. But yeah, for the people that were doing it, you could just tell by looking at them they were petrified and paralyzed and terrified.
Yeah, but that goes back to what you're saying about you take away somebody's ability to see, and all of a sudden shit gets real.
The brain starts working against you.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have to put any headphones on, because some extreme haunts, do the take your sight and put headphones on. They didn't even have to do that. It freaked people out so bad.
Yeah.
Mind you, the haunted trail did stuff that was more extreme than most haunts as well. So I remember walking through one night in a hoodie, and somebody grabbed me by my hoodie as I was walking through a door frame, so fast I didn't know how to react. So I just grabbed onto each side of the door frame, holding myself. And she was like, "Get back here, you fucking bitch." And I was just like, whoa, I was not expecting that on this haunted trail. Where did that come from? And yeah, they would use live bugs, and it was interesting for sure.
Yeah.
So, have you been to an extreme haunt? And if not, what's the closest one you think you've been to?
I think the closest I've been is probably Terror Behind the Walls at Eastern State Penn, but
now is that their normal show or something else?
That's their normal show. And I think that's probably the closest I've been in that they're more aggressive than the other haunts, at least around me, that touch. I think about Demon Acres. They say that you might be touched a little bit or something, but it's never more than somebody brushing your hair when you weren't expecting it, or tapping you on the shoulder, and then doing that stupid thing where they're on one side of you but they tap your other shoulder, or they spin you around or something. But never aggressive, grabbing you, moving you to where they want you to go.
Right.
Whereas at Eastern State Penn, it's pretty well known, I think, at this point, that you might be going through with your group of friends and they're gonna grab a hold of you and go, "You're coming with me."
Right.
I personally like that. Like I said, I like to be kind of taken out of what I thought was just the norm.
Right.
I was gonna say earlier, for anybody that's thinking the traditional haunt just isn't doing it for me, I need something a little more. There are some shows out there that do start to push those limits. We already mentioned Haunted Hoochie in Ohio. I mentioned Eastern State Penn. There's another one here. It's called Sinister Point, and they are in the Orange County area of Southern California. And this is not as extreme as what we've been talking about, but this might be a good starting point of a haunt that's kind of pushing those limits. They will do group experiences with rare individual sections, but they're going to touch you. There's going to be some minor contact, some minimal gore. It says creative jump scares. They do some holiday-themed stuff, but it's one of those things where
here in California as well, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
The 17th Door is out there. We've heard pretty good things out of them out in California as well.
Yep. 17th Door falls under that extreme haunt kind of idea. Intruder Escape is another one where it's going to be light contact, but it's going to be hoods and restraints, but it's definitely not an extreme haunt, right? So they're pushing the limits maybe a little bit more. They're in the LA area as well.
Right.
So that one might be a little bit more extreme than Sinister Point.
Yeah.
And this is I guess this starts to push the limits of extreme escape room.
Interesting.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull up 17th
Nancy,
Door.
What's one of the most extreme ones you think you've been to? Would you consider the ball drop one of the most extreme, or is there some others that you'd rope in with the extreme haunt category?
So definitely the one I've been to the most extreme, I can't even call it an extreme now, considering what you guys have talked about. It's more of an adult haunt. You guys mentioned everything you guys been through. I'm like, no, that's not what I've been through. So the former, because the owner did actually pass away. So for anyone, if they're listening to this, rest in peace, John. He owned Dead Rising. So Dead Rising had their monthly adult, and you had to sign a waiver. We definitely went to one before the pandemic, and we went to one during the pandemic. It's really fun. Compared to their regular Halloween show, I would say it's definitely fun, more fun. It's just more in your face. There's a lot of whipped cream involved, a lot of pies involved, a lot of fake blood involved. I eventually left.
Uses of whipped cream before, that's for sure.
I definitely left that haunt in a chest. So it was on wheels. They saw me. They're like, you're little, you're getting inside this chest and getting pushed out. Yeah, that was fun. I think that had to have been the best show we've ever been to. Like I said, unfortunately, because the owner did pass away, he actually, the haunt was actually taken down. So, yeah.
Right. Austin, what would you call an extreme haunt out your way, Colorado or New Mexico?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because New Mexico we just went through 2, but they only one reviewed. But in Colorado, they're both in the same town, Canyon City. But one you have to sign a waiver. It's basically you walk in the basement, and then one year they had it at the 5th floor of this old abandoned abbey. But it's pitch black, no guys or anything. They have pretty much like chicken wire that shocks you on the sides. You have to crawl through everything and just basically find your way out while actors are grabbing you, prodding you with different things. Say that's the most extreme kind of waiver haunt. And then across the street they have one that uses like a ball pit, trampoline with clowns with chainsaws. So they do bump into you, but they're not supposed to touch you. But just more like flies in darkness and kind of creative ideas and a creepy force in the middle of nowhere. But a lot of the more extreme haunts were back in the early 2000s, where they had one that was a slaughterhouse where they had like actual dead animals that they sprayed blood on you, like actual blood. But that one was shut down because they were a bit too extreme for most people.
Right.
In the middle of nowhere, but it was called Murray's Massacre. But yeah, it's not too many extreme haunts in Colorado that I experienced, so.
There you go.
I'd say for us, besides Dreadland, of course, we frequent 2 that are more extreme in our area. That'd be Nightmare on Edgewood and Haunted Hotel in Kentucky.
Yeah, they're a little not as heavy on the touching thing as they used to be probably 3 years ago or so.
Both of them, actually.
Both of them. Haunted Hotel, I mean, they used to, and every once in a while they still will when they see us going through. They'll bend you over the table and shoot sparks in your face, and they got some pretty wild stuff that goes on there. But it's more of a visual and sensory overload thing. Like they get a lot of loud sounds working against you, and just things going off all over the place. A lot of tight quarters. You don't have a lot of like big rooms or anything where you feel like you can just dart off and run away from everybody.
You're probably going to get wet. You're probably going to get shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on any normal night.
And then Nightmare on Edgewood.
Nightmare
on Edgewood. They actually got me pretty good one
night.
night.
Is accidentally burly mother effers in there.
Oh yeah, we'll just be walking through and somebody will just walk up behind and pick me up. Of course, I'm 150 pounds soaking wet, but they'll just pick me up and carry me 2 or 3 scenes down and separate the 2 of us, and they'll take Nora off a different direction, and I'll be hanging around Jeepers Creepers guy, He'll be sniffing me up and down while I'm waiting on Nora to come out.
Yeah, and when Fear Fair used to run their movie monsters, they had the creeper in there, and he'd actually lick your face.
Yeah, he would. He'd run a big wet one right up the side of your head.
I was about shit myself when he grabbed a hold of my face and licked me from my chin all the way up to my temple. I was like, whoa.
We might still have a picture of that running around
Oh my
somewhere.
God. I did not think
Is
he
it
was
scary
gonna do that.
because of COVID, or is it scary because, you know?
Oh, this has
COVID?
been
This has
probably
been-
6, 7,
yeah,
8 years
it's
ago.
been a while. Yeah.
A long time ago.
I mean, I don't know. As we frequent usually over 40 haunts ourselves, we kind of going into it, we kind of know we're probably going to get somebody's going to spit in our face or something
who's
along
going
those
to yell in our
lines, you know.
face, and there's only so much you can.
All the haunts did very well with COVID, though. We didn't have
Oh, yeah.
anybody spitting in our face through their mask or
No.
anything this year
No,
or last year.
they were really good. I mean,
Yeah,
you
and
still
then
had some touching and stuff.
We've
so
done
it's
some
whatever.
specific extreme nights at different haunts, like American Horrorplex does. What their old location at 7th Street, they used to tie you to a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah, the what they call it, the insanity challenge or
Mhm.
something like that.
And
Yeah.
then you're not in control of your tour at all. They are.
If Travis is listening to me, he'll kill me if I got that wrong. But
But it'd be interesting to see them bring that back. But now they do a different style of show where you might be in contact with nasty things to eat. You don't have to eat it, but
oh god,
I mean they've got some nasty stuff going on.
Gee, they made some weird homemade granola bars. They look like they'd pull it out of a toilet,
It looks like shit.
and then they take a big old bite out of it. Oh god,
It
it's
stinks
gross.
too, but it's like safe for everybody. So if somebody does actually eat it, it's completely
it's
safe.
actually sanitary.
It doesn't have any nuts. It's like gluten free. It's all the above,
It's totally sanitary and
Mhm.
healthy, but it don't look like it.
And then we've done an extreme night at Mayhem Mansion, and this is a 100% old school haunted house out in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And they advertised they were going to be doing an extreme haunt, and this haunt is put on by the local police as a fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, well, we got to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we got to go. So we
They
get
told
there.
you before you get there, bring clothes that
Yes.
you aren't afraid to get
we
dirty.
get there, and there's people in hazmat suits standing around.
Tyvek white hazmat
And we're
suits,
like,
yep.
uh-oh, what did we get ourselves into?
Mhm.
So we go in, and almost immediately they take me and handcuff me to some female I don't know that's also a patron. And so she's like yanking me through the haunt because she's petrified. So I'm like about to lose my arm because she was not wanting to stay in the scenes with me. And I'm like jerking her because we like to interact with the actors. So if they're like, hey, get back here and kneel and pray to this whatever, I'm down there praying to it or whatever they tell me to do.
We stick around, get the whole show.
And this lady was not having it. She thought she probably thought I worked there, which is what most customers tell us. You work here. And we're like, no, we don't. Because we just play right along with them. But they had the thing that probably bugged me the most. There was actually 2 instances that got me. If they hear it, they'll probably be proud of themselves. But they had a half barrel of water, and they tried to shove my head in it over and over again. And I don't like water, so I wasn't having that. I'm sure if I would have let them, they would have dunked my head in it. I don't know how long they would have left it there, or maybe they wouldn't have, but I was not letting them dunk my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have like this small basement type section, or it's like an old cellar. And that I had 4 male actors corner me by myself. And it wasn't that they were doing anything out of the ordinary or anything like that, but just them cornering me, and they were all talking to me as different characters. And like one of them had a head, and he kept shoving the head, I think his name was Frank, in my face. And he's like, kiss Frank, give Frank a kiss. And all the other ones were talking to me at the same time, and they wouldn't let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt uncomfortable because I don't think I've ever had 4 actors surround me like that and just kind of hold me up against the wall where I couldn't leave. But they didn't do it like too long or anything. It was just kind of unnerving that
Long enough to
nobody's
creep you
here
out.
and nobody can help me because I know they can't hear me no matter how loud I scream.
Right.
But they did let us go.
And they're real. That was Mayhem. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're real good about psyching you up before you go in there too.
For their normal show.
Yeah, they do that for everybody.
Yeah. And then we figured out they've got a bar in there, and they make up a concoction for you.
Oh God,
And
it's
if you
nasty.
ever go, I would advise drinking it, even though it's nasty, because if you don't drink it, you have to go into their closet until they decide to let you out.
That one's borderline. I would call that just that one part, more than anything, more of it extreme because you have consequences if you don't drink it, and then it's easier on you if you do play along and drink it because. And the drink is like, it's a mixture of vinegar and V8 and baking soda or flour or something, and it's real thick and, oh God, it's nasty.
It's gross. But I would say the what is the word for it? It wasn't like USS Nightmare puts on an extreme night, and we've done it twice.
Mm-hmm.
And their normal tour is about 40 minutes long if you do the RIP pass, which basically gives you access to like a mini escape room inside the haunt, and
you
then
get to see some additional rooms that not everybody does. Yeah,
and they do a full-on 18 up only extreme night. I think 2 nights of the year is what they were running. They might do it more now because they've had so many people want to do it. But Tyler and I were on the boat for over 2 hours, and there were definitely consequences for you not doing what they told you to do.
Yeah, the captain told me to get down on all fours and crawl through the rest of the haunt, which was about the last third or half of the haunt. It's a long way, and you're on, it's an old actual steamboat on the river, and it's got steel floors and all this shit, and everybody else and their brother's been walking along through there, and I got to like halfway through the last scene, and I'm like, all right, surely I can stand up now, and they're like, nope. I stood up. They sent me back all the way to the captain's quarters and had to go through the whole thing again on all fours. So, yeah, it was quite interesting.
At one point, they tied Tyler to a chair and then tied me down on top of him, facing him, and then just left us there for different groups coming in. And I'm like, what are we supposed to be doing? Are we supposed to be like, I don't know what to do with this.
So we start playing along and help.
What do we do?
Like, nope, people are like, is that a customer? And I'm like, yep, they tied me up. I can't get out. And they're like, oh, shit. So, yeah.
We got flour and water poured on us. A lot of different things going on in there. But being in a haunt for 2 hours is interesting.
It's quite a show. For sure. So, well, we're over our hour time frame here that we set aside. One last thing that I wanted to discuss before we go anywhere is we want your opinion, the listeners. We want your opinion on what we should name this show. We don't know if we should just call it the Scare Factor Podcast or Scream Team Talk, or we've had a few other ideas floating around.
What does Brian like?
What was the one you wanted?
I liked Crypt of Confusion.
Crypt of Confusion.
Crypt of Confusion. Yeah, I like that one. Who was it that came up with that? It was Doug.
I think it's Doug.
Yeah, I think it was Doug that came up with that. I really like the name. Doesn't say a whole lot about what the show's about, but like even still, like I said something about like I'm so confused, and he was like Crypt of Confusion. I'm like, oh my god, that's so good.
It's kind of fitting.
Yeah.
So if you're watching the video and you got any ideas for what we could call it, we would love to hear them, whether they're good ideas or bad ideas. We will wholeheartedly listen to them anyway, and let us know what you think down in the comments. Thank you for watching us for episode 2 here, Extreme Haunts, and we will...
Well, and also if they have any topics they would like us to talk about.
Yes, email them to us. Give us your topics.
Yes, you can email
them to... drop them in the comments.
thescarefactor@gmail.com.
Or you can email them to the Scarefactor.
Get ready to burn Tyler with a cigarette now.
So, all right, guys. So we're going to wrap it up for this weekend. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully we will catch you next Saturday at 9:30 p.m. right here on YouTube. And in the meantime, stay scary.
And we're confused and don't know what we're talking about next weekend. How you like that?
Yes, and like Tyler said, thank you for liking, watching, commenting, subscribing, and clicking that bell.